All right. Good morning, everybody. So without further ado, let's get started. I think those who have joined us late can come in a bit later. So, hi, my name is Harry. I'm part of the AspireNXT team here in Malaysia, overseeing the business and the client acquisition here in Malaysia. So we are very happy today to share some of our experience and insights to all of you. And I'm here to give you a quick overview of our company before I hand over to my awesome colleague Sandeep, who are at the standby at the moment. So let's get back to who we are. And before that, I would like to do some housekeeping here. So all the attendees are automatically muted when joining the Zoom. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask us in the chat message, or use the Q&A tab. And the slides and the recording will be available, and we will send it to you right after the webinar. And yes, and if you have any Q&A, feel free just type it in, and we will address those questions by the end of this webinar. All right, next question. Next slide, please. So yeah, so I'm here to sort of tell you who we are and how we can help. AspireNXT is a 11-year-old tech company based out of KL, and our HQ is in Singapore. And apart from Malaysia, we have branches in Malaysia, Singapore, Philippines, India, and some part of the US as well. So we believe there is no one-size-fits-all solution. This is where we come in, look at the challenges that you're facing, and we devise and tailor-made a cost-effective solution for you depending on your budget, appetite, and as well as timeline. Let's take the next slide. So I would like to take a few minutes to sort of go through the services and the core competencies that we offer. Starting from the left, the first pillar will be the AI, ML, and data. So traditionally, many organizations started off with one of two enterprise applications. As your company expand or acquire other companies, you will soon realize that a lot of your data may be living in silos or separate database. And what we do here is we help companies to sort of build a data warehouse or data lake, sort of combining all the data into a single pane of view for analysis. And by leveraging on the AI and ML technology, we help you to generate a customer 360 automatically for your business expansion, as well as running predictive analysis for your business result. Okay, now moving to the second pillar, we talk about cloud. We are in the business of cloud consulting. So, when COVID hit, we see a lot of companies accelerating their cloud migration initiatives. And 8 out of 10 conversations that we have are along the lines of migrating some of the workloads to cloud, or even looking sort of moving their backup to DR and DR to cloud. So it is not just about a lift and shift model. We actually look more into just that. We help our clients to really understand the benefit of cloud pay-per-use model, and how we can actually help them or help you to optimize your spending and driving your costs down. Now, moving to the third pillar, which is one of our greatest offering, is that our modern application. Now, when we look a lot on SME or even enterprise customers, you guys will have a lot of legacy on-premise application. Sometime, those are really expensive legacy system that takes a lot of money to maintain, for example, AS400 or even other applications, which is already outdated. So we help them to modernize those applications into newer architecture, such as microservices. So like serverless applications, as well as containerized systems like Dockers and Kubernetes. And on the fourth pillar, in the space of end user services, we are working with a few partners to deliver some of the tools to help customers to manage their endpoints. So you're talking about your laptops, desktop, mobile devices, regardless where you are, we manage them from the cloud, and it gives you a peace of mind on knowing where your devices are, the licensing, as well as the access management. And last but not least, if there is anything that you do not wish to handle, or you do not have the resources to manage, you can talk to us. We can really package a managed service for you, whether from managing your applications, your infrastructure, or your on-prem services, or even your cloud, or even hybrid. So These are the five main pillars that we offer to our customers and potentially to you. Next slide, please. So while AspireNXT is a cloud agnostic vendor, our relationship with AWS goes back a long way. When first AWS is introduced in Malaysia and Singapore, when cloud is not a thing yet, we have been working with them as a partner. While AWS provides the technology advancement and the products and services, AspireNXT will be deploying and delivering it to the end customer like you. So this slide really shows the competencies that we have acquired throughout the years of working together. We are currently the advanced consulting partner, and we are very well on our way to the highest tier, hopefully by next year. I'd like to take a 1 minute to sort of share our experiences, as well as that we are actually coined the Partner of the Year by AWS in year 2020, which was last year, for successfully completing or deployed a analytics and ML project here in Malaysia, a company called Boost, the third largest e-wallet under Axiata here in Malaysia. Yeah, so that's, would like to share a bit of our background and our competencies, and as well as the services that we offer. So in a nutshell, that's about it. Let's go to the next slide, please. All right, so that's about me sharing a little bit of the company and the background of AspireNXT. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce you my awesome colleague, Sandeep. He's our practice director in the big data and this data science portfolio. I was informed that he has many, many years of experience behind him in this topic. So if you have any questions on this area, he's the guru. So our topic for today is actually making a data-driven decision. So in all the details, I will leave it all to you, to Sandeep. Please help me welcome Sandeep R. Diddi. Sandeep, you're on mute. Yeah.
Hey, thanks, Harry. Good morning, everyone. And thanks for that quick introduction about the company and, of course, what we do and our pillars. I think that was awesome. Right. So let's get straight to the topic. We have a lot to discuss. And what I'm going to essentially cover is, some of the things we have done and of course, what we are doing and how we do and so on and so forth, right? So the idea here is mostly to understand what we as company do and of course, what kind of tool stack we use and how that has been helping our customers across the globe, right? Before getting on to you, the first slide, what you see on the screen, just to give you a quick background of what we do. I head up the data team up here, which is comprising of data engineering and data science. And what we essentially do is help a lot of our customers, do the engineering stuff in a more modern way, mostly concentrating on the data side. And we also help them do advanced analytics. Again, I'm a very strong believer that not every use case is a machine learning use case. We do a lot of advanced analytics, as in we do a lot of statistical analysis, which kind of drives a deep insights on the data. And of course, by saying that, we also have an R&D team, which typically where we are doing some product development, which I'm going to talk about in coming slides. So jumping on to our first slide, I just want to give you a kind of overview of what we did here, right? Now, this was for a customer, and of course, we would not be able to name who the customer is, and of course, because of the reasons what we have been asking to write. Now, when we got into this discovery phase, now typically what we do in a real world or when we talk to a lot of our customers is we always try to do a discovery phase, right? Because these data projects are pretty long, and unless we kind of don't have the right things in place, we probably might not have what we want, right? So a discovery phase is always needed. That's kind of decides on how your systems are and where do you want to go from your legacy to modern, right? So the use case here was a reverse engineering use case. They knew what to do, and we kind of reverse engineered from there what they wanted to do, right? Now, this was a typical use case of forecasting, which is machine learning. Again, we tried to make it a little modern. We tried forecasting it through a BI tool so that it kind of makes it more holistic view, gives you a nice representation forecasting rather than going into a statistical forecasting, right? Now, the reason why we did that was twofold. One was business to understand, our business understands more when they see visuals. And of course, when they want to kind of portray this up to the management, it was very easy to go and talk more from the presentation rather than in statistical output. And that's why we chose more towards BI level of forecasting. Now, of course, there's a lot of preparation of data, which is kind of not shown up here, which is hidden, which you see if you see my mouse hovering over the first bucket or the first box, what you see, Amazon S3 training bucket. Left on that is what your entire engineering pipeline sits, which is typically hidden out because that's not what the requirement was from the customer, right? Now, there are two folds of doing this forecasting, right? One, of course, we use the state-of-the-art model built by Amazon themselves. And of course, Amazon themselves use that model to forecast their internal e-commerce things, right? So of course, you just can't lift and shift that. We need to customize it based on your use case, based on the data set you have, and based on the data you consume and give it to us, right? Now, what we essentially started doing is, of course, when we started doing a discovery phase and we started understanding the data, we started seeing a lot of patterns in the data, right? And that kind of gave us a lot of insights on the data. We kind of discovered a lot of unique patterns, which we went back to business and said, hey, look, this is something I think you guys have not seen because you've never explored doing any advanced stuff on this data, right? Of course, you do the KPI reporting, you do the daily reporting, you do monthly reporting, maybe you do hourly reporting as well. But then getting into the more advanced stuff, and when we saw the patterns, they were kind of really interested to kind of deep dive into that. Now that's kind of an opening door, kind of built us to build a forecasting as well. Now we help them cut off from the heuristics decisions. For example, they had a lot of, I would say, domain expertise. They used to take a lot of decisions based on the gut feeling, and that's what I call as the heuristics decisions. We of course took that, and we appreciated that experiences, and we just added system to that experience, right? That makes it like an amazing combination, to say that, right? Now, typically when you work out in any domain for 15-20 years, you get to know a domain in and out. So you really have that, I would say, a like towards that domain, and you really understand what happens inside and out of that domain, right? So we took that gut feeling and experience from the engineering folks up there, and then we added a system or more like a forecasting to it, and that kind of gave us an amazing results out, right? So we increased whatever they had on the current forecasting, we increased 50% more on that. And of course, we used something called as a random cut forest. And we also used a lot of our, I would say, average aggregate levels. We reduced forecasting time from months to hours, which used to essentially take a lot of time because the data used to come from many different sources, and we had to crunch them and kind of make up a nice, I would say, a forecasting model, right? Now, we created a virtually any data time series forecast, now provided the data comes in a format we require. So we kind of we built a reusable asset. We just don't build and just leave it. We built a reusable asset, and virtually unlimited data can pour in there, provided the format is what we require. And then that's how we got an increase in our supply chain as well. And that's in a nutshell what we did here. Now, there are a lot of challenges here. One, definitely the data challenge, because we kind of didn't know, or there are a lot of concerns on the data. We never got the data we wanted. And of course, that's how most of the industry work. So we spend a lot of time engineering that, getting it into a format which we can feed into a machine. There's a lot of effort we spent on data engineering because we had semi-structured and structured data here. There wasn't any unstructured use case, but it was mostly semi-structured and structured data, right? So we had to spend a good amount of time getting these semi-structured to a structured, and structured to a compressed, and then compressed to a ML format, and ML format for forecasting, right? So essentially we followed across industry data science practice. We call it as a crisp DM practice. And I think that helped us get to this as quickly as possible. Um, as I said, we have virtually built a reusable asset. We have given them a REST endpoint, which they kind of use day in and day out in their applications. Uh, of course, we have automated this entire thing using MLOps. Whenever we have a new data set coming in, we have some pipelines which have been designed, which automatically picks up the data and trains it and deploys it and monitors it and retrain when there's a schema change on the data. Next slide, please. So this is OCRNXT, a product we are developing currently. We are almost at the testing phase now. We have built with the state-of-the-art NLP model. Of course, we have used a combination of open source technologies and AWS together. And that's what I said, right? So we kind of married a lot of open source tools and kind of bring them on AWS. And then what you see on the funnel on the left-hand side is how we kind of have built this tool on a very high level, right? This is kind of a nutshell view of the tool. There's a lot inside this. It's a pay-as-you-go model tool. It's scalable, and the reason why we want this tool to be used by most of our customers is because it's cost effective, and it definitely takes a lot lesser time than the native tools in the market, because we have used the concept of MVP, which is massive parallel processing engines, right? Now, essentially what we start doing, that we kind of get a file, could be an invoice, could be a let's say a prescription from a doctor, or could be a bill from a store, or any such file conversions we get. Typically we want it in a PDF image, and again this image needs to be in a certain pixel. For that we have a tool which converts that PDF to a pixel, a particular pixel what we need, because everything in the world of NLP and image extraction from a raw text is all based on how your pixels are on the image. The better your pixels are, the better your extractions would be, right? Because these, we term them as an unsupervised machine learning, right? It's an AI solution behind the scene, right? So once we have the data coming in, or the file coming in, we kind of compress and convert it to a proper pixel format so that we can start extracting the data we want. Then we process that image in an isolation fashion. That means we follow a strict principle of isolation. That means the tool doesn't expose any other thing apart from what you're doing. And then we extract the raw text out of it in a table format, in a more structured format. What you see at the bottom right is a sample document. And once we have that extracted, we segment that based on something called as an NLP keyword search, word ngram from Google. We do a keyword search and we format the output using, some cases we use Python, some cases we use Spark, some cases we use Go, or some cases we also have used Scala. But it all depends on the use case and how complex your PDF files are. And once the data is formatted out, we provide a nice extracted CSV format which sits into an external database, and that database is what given back to a customer. Now, what's my role as a user in this? You just have to feed the PDF, that's it, right? And rest all is taken care by us automatically. And what you get end of the day is a nice structured data. The two options: one, you get the data; one, you get a database, data in the database. Now, a lot of our customers who are piloting this project for us or piloting this tool for us, they prefer to have a database because they don't want a lot of dumps of CSV day in and day out. So they prefer to have a database which kind of gets appended every day when we feed any data, right? So we are flagging one of their invoices as, let's say, we are kind of clustering them. They have cloth invoices, they have food invoices, they have bills invoices, they have raw material invoices. So we are flagging them with each of the names. Of course, we are taking that from the invoice what we're getting, and then we are clustering them. And what we are essentially trying to do now is trying to extract the bill amount for each of these invoices and compare that with your general ledger account and see what is the spend across your organization, right? And which cluster is spending the lot and what are the key factors there. Now, that's what we are trying to achieve with this tool. This is our own subsidized tool. You probably might not get anywhere online because we haven't released it yet. We have some users doing beta testing for us. Once we have it, we intend to release it on AWS Marketplace. as well as a direct connect. So you can as well get connected to us if you want to beta this tool out and see how it works. And we'd be happy to take your feedback as well. Next slide, please. Now, stitching back to what I did or what we do in the previous slide, and this is kind of an extension of that. We took, as I said, we clustered the entire. So a company who is beta testing this for us is, I would say, a subset of a manufacturing industry. What we essentially did there is they wanted to cluster out their raw material. They want to cluster out their entire spending across because they wanted to track it at the each GL level. When I say GL level, I'm talking more on a general ledger, which is typically how a finance is tracked in a big organization, right? So the problem here we faced was they had one GL and they have subsidized each accounts under them. So whenever you take a reporting, you end up hitting the main GL, and that's definitely not the right way to do reporting because you might see some data discrepancies when you do that. So we had to cluster them out, and clustering definitely helped us, do a lot of in-depth analysis. So for instance, of course, this is not like a straight cut lift and shift from what the OCR solution we spoke previously. This is a combination of that plus a lot of data analytics, which we did. They had an Oracle warehouse system. And as you all know, Oracle warehouse is an elephant, right? So they had a lot of data in there, and they had a direct and indirect procurement data. They had subsets data, they had cluster data, they had vendor data, and they had partner data who provide them raw materials. They had billing data, they had how they consume and how they buy things, their logistic data, so on and so forth. Now, the whole idea we started off, and by the way, this project went, the first phase is released. We are working on the second phase now. The idea here was to kind of give them an insights on their entire spending, right? Now, there might be a question that did they never had any tool which did that? They did. Oracle Warehouse, in fact, provides that. In fact, internally, they had developed some of them, but they used to not get an aggregate level, to a minute aggregate level and do a clustering, and clustering needs a little bit of ML on top of that. That's something they never were able to do, right? And that's when we kind of spoke to them and understood how their vendor onboarding happens. They have like a lot of vendors gets registered to this company, but they don't kind of onboard each and every person who registers, right? They have a strong vendor onboarding process that depends on several factors of cost, of course. And then we have kind of decide what will you spend and how much will you spend on the vendor, because once you get as a vendor, they kind of spend on you to set up that exact replication of what the warehouse would look like, because they want the quality to be at the top, right? They just don't want anybody to get registered as a vendor, right? And of course, we had captured the vendor costs previously plus the latest market price, and we scraped some of the data with permissions from different sites where the vendor pricing was listed, and we did a min-max analysis, and we threw some of the recommendations on the system. So when a vendor registers, I'm a vendor, I'm registering today, and based on my quotation, I'm going to throw up a notification to a system or to the management that, hey, you know what, we have a vendor A registered, and this is the quote, and this is this much higher on an average, this much higher or this much lower than the market cost. This is the minimum cost they have, kind of asked us, and this is the maximum cost they can go up till, and this is the average negotiations you can do. And that's what we call it as, I would say, a statistical analysis. Here, you don't need any, I would say, an ML or AI solution. This was a core statistical analysis we did, right? Or typically we are turning your invoice and a spend data to more an intelligent solution backward, right? We classify that, we drill down to a focused level, and we give strategic decision based on that. For instance, they also do something called as a price forecasting at SKU level, right? Now, we essentially want to give them a high level understanding of how modeling on the price is done. And of course, that comes with a lot of historical data, right? We just cannot pump in anything and start predicting something. So we took that historical trend of the pricing data, and we saw how pricing is decided. And based on that, we wrote the logic on the spend analysis, and we kind of throw them as a BI tool, and which tells how much are you spending and how much will you spend going forward. And definitely this helped them to bring down the delivery unit cost, because we gave them an accurate min-max evaluation across the country, and they bought the products from persons who's, of course, they don't go with a very less price, nor they go with a max price. We kind of gave them an average pipeline, and that's how things went on from there, right? So we also harmonized the entire pricing across their entire horizon, from all the buying centers they had, from all the vendor centers they had, all the partners they had. So we kind of harmonized the entire pricing across that, and that gave them a very good visibility across their price, right? That's kind of I would say a very deep study we did here. Now there is a very little ML. What you see here on this is more on a statistical side, right? We used a lot of advanced statistics to derive this. You would probably say out of the entire 100% project, you probably have around 10 or 15% of ML, and rest 80 to 85% is core mathematics and statistics. Because as I said in the first, and I still say that, not every problem is going to be an AI or ML problem, right? So you can solve a lot even not going there, right? That's what we always tell our customers, right? That's where we help a lot of our customers derive that decision. Feel free to pose your questions. Of course, I will take them at the end of the QA, but feel free to ask any questions you have on the chat. And when we come to the QA, happy to take them as well. Next slide, Nadia. So this is another marketing case we did. This is known as an inventory optimization project. Again, this is not a heavy lifting ML, but it's a combination of ML data and, of course, some of the or most of the statistics as well, right? Now, we use a lot of prescriptive and predictive analytics here. What we built them is a cloud-based SaaS model of a inventory optimization system. Now, this helped, so this helped the organization or do a lot of, or a lot of overcome a lot of the supply chain challenges, right? One of the supply chain challenges they had on the procurement, because they had, as I said, many vendors, and they never knew which vendor to procure what, because they didn't have an wish, or they didn't have a visibility on the cost, because that's very important. Of course, having said that, not that they didn't know the cost, they definitely, but it was not present in a position where they could just quickly go and see what they want. Of course, they can get it by going to SAP, asking them to pull down the report, do the comparison, give them the report, but they didn't have that time. They wanted something more on a visual side, and that's what we built, as I showed in the previous figure. Now, the whole idea of this inventory optimization was to make sure we have a smooth and efficient supply chain across the process, and of course use a lot of supply chain methods. A lot of planning and analyzing and collaboration across vendor was done through ML, right? We wrote a lot of algorithms. I would say not a lot, but yes, some of the algorithms, subsets of some algorithms, tests from some algorithms. And what we did, we helped them give a better planning and better collaboration platform, which kind of goes and talks to that. Now, this was, as I said, is a serverless architecture. This was built, as Harry mentioned. This is an entire serverless tool. We don't have a single server anywhere in this entire development of this cloud tool. This is not an open source or a purchase tool. This was specifically built for this customer. It's a combination of application development and ML. This completely is a cost optimized microservice architecture. When we did a cost comparison, what they were planning to do on premises, we cut that cost up to 42% approximately. The reason why is because we've moved more to an object storage architecture rather than a disk storage architecture, but we did not compromise on the performance, right? So, and we never gave a client to install. This was all through a SaaS and managed by us. They don't have to worry about the scalability of that. So this was a cross-functional tool initially built for Department A. Department B get fascinated seeing this tool, and then we built for Department B, and then C and D. We are now currently building for E. We're going live probably by February next year, because that's the build we are doing is typically a little on a higher side. So, we have a lot of data in, a lot of requirements from that. So we are planning to go live by February. That's more on how we help our customers do the inventory optimizations as well. Next slide, please. Right. Now, the entire stack, what we work is on Spark, of course, which is a combination of ML and data. Now, what we do is, of course, not every data is a big data, but for some companies, 5 terabyte is big, but I've worked with customers, for them, even 600 GB was a big data, right? Because they cannot handle that data to a scale. So we as a team, as I said, we have a data engineering dedicated team, which I closely work with. That's under my umbrella. We have data engineering, we have data analyst, and we have advanced data analyst team. So as I said, about 3 pillars. Now, we use the tool set what you see on the screen, Elastic for like a data lake 360. We use Kafka for streaming, Redis for in-memory caching, and Mongo for NoSQL database, Cassandra same HBase NoSQL, and of course Postgres. And what you see here is everything open source, right? And of course, Redis is a separate one, but what you see is 99% of them are open source. And we believe in contributing to open source. We are contributing. We have contributed a lot to the community. We were one of the top contributor on KNIME community for analytics. If you heard of a tool called KNIME, KNIME, we were one of the top contributors to that tool, and how we enhance the tool, what are the contributions we have made. And we believe in using a lot of open source stack, because we believe in getting a cost optimized architecture, right? So we don't want our customer to spend a lot on a technology and less on engineering, but we believe that you spend brain more on engineering and technology, we can anyway stack it up to an open source stack, right? Of course, not that you're going to get everything for free. There could be some places where you have to go and kind of get in some money pumped in, because you might have to scale them up more from an enterprise fashion. But if you want to try and see how these tools look, open source stack, happy to get on a call with you guys. Let us know if you want to try the entire stack of open source, how the tools are built, what is that you get out of your data, and when do I go to a lake house architecture versus a data lake architecture. That's something we do as well. I personally have a lot of my team, we have 2 people more along with me. We do a lot of advisory for a lot of enterprise, where they kind of are in a situation where they're, yeah, you know what, we are trying to go to a data lake, but we also have a suggestion of going or data mesh. What do you suggest, and what is the best? Give me an estimation, cost estimation, performance, and how it's going to look in future for me, right? So that's kind of a stack we have. And of course, we will not end with some slides, but we will end with kind of an offer for you guys. If you are interested to pick that up, feel free to let us know. I'll invite Harry to talk about that offer and take it from there.
All right. Thank you so much, Sandeep, for your awesome speech. Okay, so now today, before we sort of wrap up today's session, we would like to share one offer to all of you. So for today's attendees, we are offering a 2 months free subscription to our purpose-built AI-powered chatbot. So this will really gives your customer a better experience in shopping with you or engaging with you, and definitely this will boost your customer engagement with your business. So give it a try. So after this, we will be sending the recording of this webinar. Along with it, you can reach out to us by replying the email, and our team will get back to you on this and sort of give you the experience of our smart chatbot. So that's that, and we will go to our Q&A. So next slide, just to go into the Q&A. If you have if you have any questions, please feel free to drop any of your questions in the chat board or the Q&A tab. All right. So one question from Jones. Does my data line up with other systems? Sandeep?
Hey, let me take that question. Does any data line up with other systems? Jones, do you mind elaborating that a little? When you say, does my data line up with other systems? Just to make sure I don't understand your question in a different way.
It's a bit shy.
Right. So if I'm kind of assuming that you're talking that, you know, when you say data line up with other system is, I'm 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 assuming that you want to kind of stitch to make some sense. If we have already ERP system, how do we spend as benefits? If we already have an ERP system, how benefit my company? Oh yeah. Okay. Great. So if you already have a system like ERP, like SAP or Odoo or Oracle Financials, then of course you get the state of the art spend analytics from that, right? But what these tools miss is flavor of an ML on top of it, which gives you a more, I would say, an accurate forecasting. And when we compare that with the ERP out of the box forecasting, we have not seen that accurate for the systems at least we have worked for. So we will keep what you have right now, but we give more advanced studies to that data, which can be utilized along with your ERP system data. So that kind of is an add-on value to it, right? So that's what we do, and we are doing for one of the company where we are taking out their FICO data from SAP, and we're trying to do some analytics on top of it, apart from what SAP does, right? SAP FICO does. So we're trying to give the ML angle to that. A lot of these ERP have ML solutions with them, but they don't come at a cost what we do, right? The other tools do, right? As we are a strong believer of open source stack, but we still maintain the security. The cost versus using the legacy tools or native ERP tools, ML solution versus what we build is there is a huge difference on the cost. I mean, of course, when I say difference, we're not on a higher end, we're talking on a lower end cost difference.
Okay, hope that answers your question, Ferdinand. We have a question on what's the ideal timeline for us to do the forecast?
Okay, so that depends on the data. Ideally, we get a sprint running in 2 to 3 weeks. Ideally, we have a sprint of 2 weeks. We give MVP in 2 weeks, which is a minimal viable product, provided we are run with some assumptions that your data is in a format we request for. And if your data is not in a format we request for, then it kind of takes another week or two to get the data in the format. But essentially, if we have all we want in the format we want, which we have a checklist of, then take it as an MVP of 2 weeks. If not, then it's going to be 3 to 4 weeks. Hope that kind of answers the question.
I wanted to circle back on Joan's question. Have you answered Joan's question? The data lineup with other systems?
No, yeah, I was just trying to assume on that, Jones, and correct me if my assumption is wrong. So are you talking about data lineup with other system? Is that you want to kind of isolate or stitch them? Both our answer is yes. We isolate your data lineups with other systems. We don't stitch them. Also, we stitch them to give more insights. That, again, it's just based on assumption, but if you want to elaborate, I'll be happy to kind of deep dive into that question as well.
All right. Any more questions from the floor? Any follow-up questions?
Okay, we have how many? How can my data be associated across all the tools? Okay, we have another question. How can my data being associated across all tools? Um, Jones, I mean, it's a stack, right? So we kind of don't work on a specific tool stack, right? So the tool stack, what we build is generally for everything, right? So let's assume that you have, let's take an assumption that you have unstructured data, you have a structure. So we don't kind of spin up an entire stack for your different data sources. So we have one stack which kind of takes care of everything, right? So uh, once your data is pumped in, we write some compression algorithm, then the data is flown in to a feature engineering phase where we feature engineer data. Then the feature engineer data goes to a refined phase. In the refined phase, we apply a lot of encoding to your columns. Once the refined phase is over, we go ahead and write a models on top of it. So it's a journey from start to end. And in each phase, we have a different tools on the data. So it totally depends on what kind of a data you have and what problem you're trying to solve.
Keep it coming. We have about 10 more minutes before we can before we end. If you have more questions, feel free to ask us. Okay, one more question. Can you elaborate on the inventory optimization? How can we share the data with you, and what kind of data to share? Sandeep, let's unmute yourself.
Yes, thanks for that. So good question. So one, we definitely need your supply chain inventory data, as in your partner onboarding process. How do you onboard your vendors? How does the vendor onboarding happens? And what kind of, if there are any thresholds on onboarding? For instance, some companies don't onboard any vendors, right? They have a set of process to onboard. So you need that data. And of course, how is your inventory, current inventory system, as in, for example, what's your percentage of sell versus percentage of warehouse inventory, what you keep. That's something we definitely need. And how is the current business, or how is the current forecasting happening? For instance, do you forecast weekly, do you forecast monthly, or do you forecast from heuristics, right? So maybe you're a domain expert, you know that I'm going to definitely sell 10 products this week, so I'm going to pump up another 20 in my warehouse, so have an inventory in case I have a spike, I can take it from there. That's what we need to start with. um, you can share the data to several ways. Of course, we need to have an NDA first to share the data. Once we have an NDA in place, either you share that through your system, we get access to your system. If the access is not allowed, we give an FTP link. If FTP is not allowed, we give an SFTP. If SFTP is not allowed, we give an object storage. If object storage is still not allowed, we spin up a server within your organization, and that's where you pump in your data, and through secure JDBC connection, we pick up the data, which is allowed by IT security.
All right. Any more questions from the floor? All right. Remember, as attendees, you get a 2 months free subscription for our chatbot, AI powered chatbot. Feel free to use it and try it. Really put the AI into work. All right. We have one more questions coming in. Sandeep, this is for you. Is our historic data a good indicator of future performance?
Okay, we have, is the data good indicator? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anything you want to do, we need history of the data, and yes, the more the data you give, the better your future performance will be. So in a nutshell, what I'm trying to answer is, when we do a future performance analytics, we will need a lot of data points which is coming from future. So it is a very important recipe for us to build an appropriate model for a future performance.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, guys, for all the questions, and Sandeep, for your help to sort of answer all those questions. I hope this session is very beneficial to all of you. Thanks a lot for your morning. And we look forward to sort of talk to you and reach out to you and see if we can do business together. All right. Thank you so much for you guys for your time, and
Bye.
cheers. Cheers.
Cheers.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye-bye.